All right, so just to kind of recap what we've done so far from our previous videos, we went through and we've identified in our exercise what are things that were dimensions in our particular word problem. So like for example, I'm going to use yellow, and we've identified that service, that doesn't look that great, service, vehicle, mechanic, and diagnosis are dimensions. Also, we took note that per week and per month are also another dimension based on period. Then we've also identified that we have time and services, and then cost, which are measures. I'll use a different color for those. For our 5 dimensions of service, vehicle, diagnosis, mechanic, and time period, we know that each one has got a specific set of attributes. So the service has actually got service code and description. So that is going to be an important thing for us. A vehicle has type and make. Right? A mechanic, well, doesn't have any kind of attributes here, but we know that we should probably include their name, maybe when they've started or if they have a title. The diagnosis has a code and a description. And of course, we can figure out what a calendar time per month would be. So we've answered what are the dimensions, and we used the color yellow here. For measures, we've used the color green here. And then the fact, of course, is the combination of all those things put together that we've talked about. And the finest grain is really one service, right? So let's kind of think about it. One service per diagnosis. So with that information, we started creating an ER diagram, and I showed you the beginning of it. And here's where we should be with what we have. We have our 5 dimensions of mechanic, service. Let me go ahead and start using a little bit of a marker here. So we have our mechanic, we have service, we have the diagnosis, and we have the vehicle. Now, what I've also included with each of these is the field name and also the data type. Now, we should also take note that with each of these, that the first item is always going to be the primary key for each of the dimensions. And each of these primary keys will have some connection to the fact table. Now, I want to take note specifically of what I did for the time table. Right? I've included a time ID, but I've also included all of these other variants. For this particular exercise, what we do know is that the day of the week was an important factor. In fact, let's go back to the assignment. Right? We have per week and per month. So not day of the week was not required, but what was required is that we have the month and the week number. Okay, so the month and the week number are important things to have here. All these other things you do not need to have, but they're always a good thing to have in your time dimension. So what we want to do is we want to be able to connect these primary keys in with our fact table. Now, what I've done in the fact table, based on what we've seen earlier, is the first part is all of the primary keys listed as foreign keys inside our fact table. And when we combine all of them together, they become a primary key for the fact sales. Right? And the reason why they're a primary key is because they're a unique value when combined that only exists once per record. We also have the measurements of cost, which is a money data type, and then time and service, and I'm giving it a minutes data type. Remember, this time and service is not the same as this time. So what we need to do is start to create a connection. So For the first foreign key that we have, we need to create a connection from here to the service code. Now, if you're familiar with cardinality rules always talk about how many times a particular data reference is made in one table versus the other. So for example, if I was going to list a service code in the fact table and it refers to one of the service codes in the dimension table service and only one of the dimension codes in that table. However, if I was going to look at the service code in the dimension table and look at it by referring to the fact table, we know that in that fact table, one service code could exist many times, and it could exist as much as one time or as little as one time. So what we tend to do is we draw these connections to each of these based on that type of principle, where we have a one-to-many relationship going from the dimension to the vehicle, and then we have a one-to-one relationship going from the fact table to the dimension. Now, this is typically covered in great detail in a database course. For the purposes of this course, what I'm going to tell you is that every time that you make a connection between two data tables, always know that what is on the fact table is a one-to-many, and what is on the dimension table is a one-to-one. All right, so that's going to be our cardinality rules in general for these types of relationships. Okay, and from that being said, I'm going to take a moment and I'm going to draw each of these in. So for the first one, I want to highlight that over here on the far left-hand side of our screen, there's a relationship that we want to take advantage of. So I'm going to click and I'm going to drag that in. And if you look, actually that's not the one I wanted. I'm going to hover over them and I'm going to look for the specific one here. Oh, no, that's not it either. There it is. It's the bottom left-hand corner. So I want this relationship. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take a connection, bring it to my primary key of the dimension table, and then bring it to the foreign key that's in the fact table. I'm going to copy that little relationship and do the same thing for the next one. And then I will do the same thing for the next one. And to make things a little simple, I'm actually going to move these around so that we don't have crossing lines. So there we go. Now we have our ER diagram. All right. So this should help you with the first lab that we're working with in being able to create that that first database diagram. Now what I want you to do is go ahead and try to work through this next one and try to use the same strategy. Figure out what the dimensions are, the measures, and then of course what is a fact, right? And then kind of think about those types of questions while you're dealing with this. To give you a quick hint, this is a sales database, so what this fact table should be is sales, right? Because they sell products, they want to set up and track the measure of sales for each item, right? So this is going to be a real big key as to what is the key measure that you're going to be dealing with. All right, with that, good luck, and we'll talk to you next time.